Welcome to Tech and Drugs. In this episode, I'm pleased to welcome Walid Kamoun, Head of Oncology R&D at Servier. Walid leads Servier Oncology pipeline, overseeing the journey of new therapies from early scientific discovery all the way through clinical development and approved medicines. His work spans the full innovation cycle, from identifying promising biological targets to expanding treatments into new indications. Before joining Servier in 2022, Walid spent more than 16 years in the Boston biotech ecosystems. At Takeda, he led translational oncology programs across several cutting-edge therapeutics programs, including immuno-oncology, cell therapies, and oncolytic viruses. Earlier in his career, he worked at Merrimack Pharmaceuticals on nanoparticle drug delivery systems, signaling inhibitors, and antibody programs across both discovery and clinical development. Walid's background is remarkably interdisciplinary. He trained in biology, holds a master's degree in computer science, and also completed medical training in Tunisia before pursuing a scientific career in the United States. Throughout his career, he has worked at the intersection of biology, medicine, computation, and drug development. More recently, Walid has been exploring how artificial intelligence could transform pharmaceutical R&D, particularly in oncology, looking at how new technology can help accelerate drug discovery and ultimately improve outcomes for patients. So Walid, welcome to the podcast, and thank you so much for having me today at Servier R&D Center in Saclay. And for those who don't know where Saclay is, it's close to Paris once you go through the traffic jams.
No, thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and welcome to our brand new R&D site. We always say brand new, although it has been now 3 years since we moved in. And yes, it is south of Paris. It's not as jammed here, but you have to sometimes cross Paris, so it's an interesting adventure.
Yeah, I had to go through the famous Arc de Triomphe.
Oh, but it's an experience for people to. I think it's an interesting experience.
I think any non-Parisian or non-French who go through that's one thing that they will remember for their life. Like I don't know how many lanes you have around this thing.
So I had a clinical ad board about immuno-oncology, and the US-based clinicians were talking about this intersection that is unique, and then we went through it as we were going to a restaurant afterwards, and it was very, very, very cool. Almost people want to see it as an attraction. But,
yeah, I don't know who came up with this idea to have that, but anyway, that's for another discussion. Yes. So the way I like to start things is that we'll talk about what you're doing, about what Servier is doing in pharma, and specifically at the intersection of technology and pharma. But I like to start whenever I have a guest with background. What is it that brought you to where you are today? Even started from early childhood. What is it that got you interested in this journey that brought you to what you're doing now at Servier?
Oh, it's fantastic, fantastic question. I would, if I had to kind of focus and answer in few words, because that would take several hours, I would say curiosity. I think throughout my childhood in Tunisia, growing up in high school, in primary school, and then in medical school, what drove my interest in things is purely curiosity. That's why I always thought of myself as touching lots of disciplines. It's part of what I like. And I think at one point I was sharing all the books that I like to read throughout the year, and they all touch so many disciplines that somebody said it was kind of weird. It's like some philosophy, and then some tech, some AI, some future of AI, and then goes back to astrophysics and things like that, and cosmology. So lots of things, but at the heart of it is curiosity. And the other thing is I do, and I hope everybody can find, I think I have the best job in the world. We discussed it last week when we were in China with 2 members of my team. And in essence, we are doing a fantastic work towards a very noble mission of bringing therapies to cancer patients who need them. We have thousands of people dying of cancer. And at the same time, doing it through having conversation with amazing people all the time, everywhere in the world. So I always say it, and I said to my boss, I would pay to have this job. Nicely enough, I'm being paid to have this job, but it's a fantastic thing. So I think my journey is really anchored in curiosity, initially in Tunisia, then in the US, then in France in the last 4 years. And the curiosity crosses, if you want, almost all areas, whether it's leadership purely, or whether it's scientific, or whether it is technological. And the beauty, we are kind of an intersection right now between all of this. All of them are evolving in amazing ways. The technological side, the scientific side, and even the leadership side. So we're in an interesting period. But always the question I ask myself is, does everybody think that they are in an interesting period? Maybe it's just the human psychology wants us to believe that we are in an interesting period, but I think we're in an amazing period for the field.
I fully agree with you. I mean, I often tell myself also that I feel incredibly lucky because if you had asked me when I was studying whether I would do that now, no chance that I will even think about it because I knew I liked science, I knew I liked discoveries and new stuff, but there was nothing, 20 years ago that prepared me to working at the intersection of technology, computer science, biology, pharmaceutical development. It just didn't exist.
Yeah.
So I think it's always a mix of luck, being prepared for the luck, and then making interesting choices at some point. You mentioned something which is a great segue for the next thing I want to discuss. It's pharmaceutical leadership. AI is disrupting everything in every single industry, and of course it's the same in pharma. I often have discussion with with leaders in pharmaceutical organization, where I'm always reminding myself and other people that if you look at how many diseases are known, it's like 23 or 24,000. 14,000 are rare disease. And we have approximately 3 to 4,000, depending on how you count, drugs that are marketed. And of course, many drugs are against the same indication. So it may be against 1,000 diseases. In a good year, the best year, I think we got 58 drugs or 60 drugs that were approved by the FDA. And on average, it's like 40. So at this pace, we need another 500 years to cure all diseases. And then you have some AI leaders who say in 2030, we will have cured all diseases. Of course, it's not going to happen, but maybe the truth is in between. And what I tell people often when they say, well, AI is overhyped, I'm like, well, maybe it's hyped, but the way we do things today, it's not great for patients. Of course, we make amazing discoveries, but it takes too long. So AI is our best shot. So now going back to leadership, so how is AI changing what it means for to be a leader of R&D teams in the pharmaceutical organization?
Fantastic question. Also, it's actually I have in the last say 2 or 3 months, I have immersed myself in several LLM tools and AI tools covering the main big platforms as a way, and we did lots of testing in my leadership team and trying to see what does it mean, how strong is it, how powerful is it, and how do we even use it. And it changes, in my view, the paradigm. So at Servier, similar to lots of other companies, we have project centricity mode. In essence, a therapeutic project has a leader, which is like the CEO of the project, and has a cross-functional team, initially maybe having chemists, down the line having clinical operations people, etc., etc. And then you have governance that oversees and agrees on investments at different points. Kind of this is the classical, and in my view, most companies seem to have organized this way. Right now, I think AI disrupts this model in different ways. First, the governance piece. Now, if you have governance and if you have people, me as the head of Onco R&D, has access to these tools that are able to go to the next level in terms of reasoning and thinking and strategizing, does this make me a better reviewer? But then, if I'm not just doing governance, what about if I'm co-constructing with the teams? But does that then penetrate what the team is supposed to do in a small setting? Similarly, the disciplines piece. If you have, let's say, the asset leader, which we consider as the CEO of the project, if he has access to tools that are able to think regulatorily, think in a clinical operations standpoint, think in clinical pharmacology standpoint, etc., as good as clinical pharmacologists or regulatory intelligence people? Or how does that work? Do you have a hybrid team of agentic AIs and regular people, or do you have a shadow team that helps the asset leader make draft zero of the entire program, then work with the teams? So for me, this is very disruptive. The current models are already very powerful, and they can only improve. and they improve at very high speed. So that's why I was just having a meeting with one of my new asset leader, Vicky, that just joined the team a month ago or 6 weeks ago. I worked with at Medibank a long time ago. And I was telling her, now, you as an asset leader, I want you to adopt a different mindset. Instead of organizing and integrating the different functions, what about if you come using these tools and come with, this is the entire plan, integrated with all of it. And now go into, in essence, the human intelligence and expertise is to refine an already built, let's say, draft zero, if you want. And I told her, over time, next year, in 3 years, that draft zero will become even better and even better and even better. And that potentially will then accelerate everything. So from a governance standpoint, organization standpoint, leadership standpoint, for me, this is transformative. And I think the company that will be able to adopt this transformation will likely succeed at bringing therapies faster to patients. The issue, and as you described it, we have 50, 60 plus things approved in a year. Lots of them are oncology. I think 30 plus are oncology, probably, by the FDA, but I'll say EMA, FDA are very similar. The issue that we're facing is time and probability of success. In essence, it takes us a long time to get the molecules approved, and at the same time, 1 out of 10 succeeds if you go from early clinical. 1 out of maybe 20 succeeds if you go in research or earlier. So first, can AI accelerate the timeline? Then we have a faster cycle and we're able to bring things faster. And second, which I think is the biggest return on investment, can we go from a 10% success rate to a 50% success rate? That will multiply by 5 the things that will be approved, from 50 to 250. And the other piece that for me is behind is clinical transformative benefit. Because we have sometimes molecules that are able to add, say, 3 months of overall survival with good quality of life. It's meaningful. The patients want to have that. But what about if we get more? Can we really push the disease more than that, let's say, 3 months? And for me, that's the other piece that AI could potentially support, not just adding the number of therapies, but also the transformative clinical benefit that we can have behind these therapies. And as I said, for oncology, people are dying. It's not, there is urgency in how to come. I'm not underestimating the complexity of other diseases, but for me, at least oncology is, the endpoint is survival. So it's an obvious unmet medical need. So it's a very long answer that went through lots of things. I'll get you, I'm sure you'll be able to frame, but yeah, this is, for me, is highly transformative.
Yeah, and I want to go back afterward specifically on the on some specificities on how AI is changing the R&D work. But if we go back a little bit to the leadership piece, because when you think about it, we are just 3 years and a bit post ChatGPT. If we put a stick in the ground when this hit all of us, and it's a massive change for everyone. So in terms of really we see a lot of large pharmaceutical organization and large organization really changing their structures, their org chart. Are there things specifically that you've seen in your organization or in other organization that where changes of organization are driven by the fact that AI adoption needs to be core and center of your activity? So do you have already examples of that, or do you think this will happen?
So I think, so there's 2 things. I think one, I think the industry is behind technology. I think technology has surpassed, and in essence, there is a little bit of a catch-up mode, and technology seems to move faster. So if it's a race, it's like you're running behind somebody who runs faster than you. You can never catch up. So what everybody is doing, what most people are doing is, in essence, is this an integration of AI within the current ways of working and the current structure versus taking AI and transforming the ways of working. And I would say at this point, you have most of these models happening. Some companies are in transformation mode. Some companies are in transformation mode no matter what. So this is pharmaceutical industry is an industry that transforms every few years. It's also including like research. Is it linked to the clinic versus linked to science? So lots of dimensions. And in my view, AI is adding another dimension to it. What I think is going to be very, very interesting to see is that these AI tools are an amazing booster and accelerator for biotechs, for small biotechs. Because in essence, with these AI tools and as they evolve, it gives them the depth of expertise and experience of experienced people.
Yeah.
And that will enable them not only to go the speed of light, which they are very good at, but to also go with as an additional layer of very deep expertise in all of the different sub-expertise that you need, clin pharm, design, etc., etc. So in my view, the first kind of booster that will happen automatically is for biotechs because they already are structured. They don't, organizational complexity is very low. Then that will then incentivize all mid and big size companies to think about how do we then, in essence, stay and maintain some level of competitive advantage. And at least for Servier, our approach is relatively simple. We adopt what we call the one innovation engine mindset. In essence, we're doing things internally, and we are always partnering with external companies, startups, biotechs in China, in the US, wherever they are, to bring in innovation externally. So we see it as this accelerator is going to accelerate a part of our engine. Can we also, do we want to transform and how the other engine? Do we want to have the other engine work on more complex things that require more time and more depth of understanding of biology and chemistry, etc.? So this becomes like, how do you create a complementary system? So right now, I think we're going to be all in test and learn mode. What we need to get used to as a mid-sized company is to always be in test and learn mode because the thing moves so fast that the classical model of test, learn, deploy is not work or design everything. It doesn't work. You have to always adopt the entire time. And it's gonna, at the end, be really, I think it's a cultural change. At most companies, I think this will likely lead to, it will, like the Boston ecosystem I did most of my career in, lives already in that mindset with extremely fast pace and changing all the time. In big company or small company, it's always changing. And in essence, people got used to that. That's just the baseline. The baseline is things are changing. At Servier, of course, it's a multinational company. The R&D is in France, in Boston, in Copenhagen, in Budapest, etc. And you can see that you have different cultures. You have the culture of the organization and the culture that is local. So in my view, we're probably going to go towards a Boston style, in my view, culture that is built on everything is changing all the time to optimize. And at the end, it's about bringing therapies to patients that are dying. So in my view, at least the mission is very clear. Nobody is going to say push back against change that will potentially bring faster therapies to people dying. At least this is what I'm convinced of, is that people are always open to change because the mission is very strong.
Yeah, I think people need to be reminded sometime, when you're in a job and of course, you're removed when you're in the lab, you're several steps away from the patient.
Yeah.
And reminding people of the mission, I think, is essential. But I wanted to go back to one other thing that you were saying, because change, we are in an industry that changes a lot. And sometimes during changes, it's difficult to get everyone on board. I was at a meeting with a tech company recently, and they were saying that in tech, the ROI of AI tools is already demonstrated more than what we have in pharma, because it's much more direct. It's in the past, when you were writing code, one of the bottleneck was how fast can you ship the next version. Now it has shifted toward how fast can user adopt your tool, because you can ship much faster. So what happened in some tech companies is that now they say, if you're not using the AI tool, we'll put you on a performance improvement plan. And of course, we are not there yet in the pharmaceutical industry, but how do you manage adoption of new tools and new ways of working as a leader in a pharmaceutical organization?
So, great question, and so I'll say some level of debates even internally around that. I think the head of our newly formed digital data and AI in R&D, Theo, presents it as a kind of a do-it-yourself mode. So adoption is not about top-down forcing people to adopt and use, but it is about them seeing their problem that they are solving all the time, and automatically them, in essence, pushing to get the tools that will enable them to do it better and faster. I had this fantastic example 3 weeks ago with my clinical scientist team that are always looking at clinical data from trials, doing review, QC, interpretation, extracting insights, sharing them with the investigator, with the clinical leader, looking at the strategy, etc., etc. And they do some level of manual review of the data. And they were asking, can we create a dashboard? Can we work with the biostat or the data AI organization or whatever it is? And at the end, I told them, no, the idea is you don't want to find who can do it for you. You want to find the AI approach that will help you do it yourself. And as soon as you do it yourself, you see how beautiful is it, and then you can adapt it to your need, because your need is going to evolve. So you're going to have a third person between you and the thing, and that it's going to be painful to you and the person by definition. And within that team, there are like 7 or 8 clinical scientists in early clinical in my group, and they were all, and I told them, look, these tools, and it's not even, and I have zero doubt that whether it's Copilot or Gemini, or they all can do it. They all can do what they're asking, actually. So it's not about we need to find the one that does it the most efficiently or the best, or it doesn't even matter, actually. Any of them, it's just a matter of having them. I told them you need half an hour to an hour. 3 years ago, I used to say everybody needs to learn how to code. Had a conviction that if everybody knows how to code, they will be able to build the right algorithm, the right code that will help them do any analysis that they need to do. And everybody is analyzing things anyway all the time. For this, and a few weeks ago, I said, no, you don't need to learn how to code. You have these tools that, in essence, are hearing what you're saying, coding in the background, creating cleaning up the data, extracting the insight that you need, and it is you talking to them in natural language. So it's just a matter of you learning kind of how to do the best prompts if you want, but it's not even prompt engineering is kind of in my view, is a made up thing. It's just how you talk to people. How you talk to an AI tool is like how to talk to people. Nobody said talk engineer to tell me how to talk to you. But to me, that group, I believe, across the board, that is the mindset. At least at Servier, I have zero doubt. And all teams will have the same reaction. If you give them something that can make their life easier, do whatever they are doing faster, better, and with them fully owning it, is an amazing feeling. I think human psychology likes that. So I know some companies are doing it more as you do it, or you're in performance review, you do it, or you're out. And maybe there is a very small percentage of people somewhere that are like that. I think it's extreme minority. It's like people using Outlook. Nobody is saying if you don't use Outlook, you're out. Like people using computers, and the adoption of these things happens seamlessly. For the AI and how useful is it, I think it will even happen even faster and even more seamless. The only thing in this discussion I had with Theo is how do we deploy as many tools as we can to as many people as we need, and help them know how to use it. And we have a whole program around training, and there is like lots of things that our department, DDSI, Data Digital information system department is putting together lots of beautiful things for people that want to learn. I told them also you can go to YouTube and do 5 minutes in YouTube, and that might be sufficient. Actually, everybody can do it at their own way, because these are already highly deployed things. But anyway, I think I'm an optimist, and I think these things are so useful. I don't think you need to go down to stick or carrot mode of stick if they don't take it and carrot if they use it. They will want to use it anyway.
What you're saying reminds me of an article that I read a few months ago. It was about Johnson & Johnson. And I think the way they called their approach was the 1,000 flowers. So there was a clear mandate from the top down that AI is important, but we don't necessarily know from a central perspective what everyone needs. So for a year, they let everyone experiment. So they gave a tool, let everyone experiment, and they had, I think, 900 experiments in parallel.
Use cases or something.
Yeah, use cases. Then after 1 year, they started to evaluate, and they realized, first, there is a lot of redundant things. So people actually doing similar use case, which is a good thing because it kind of validates them. Then some that were not really useful. And then they realized that there was 10 to 15% of the use case that drove 80% of the value.
Yeah.
Of course, you need to define value and be clear on what do you mean is ROI in this case. And there are plenty of the definition, I guess. And then what they decided to do afterward is, okay, then we'll discontinue 750 use case, double down on the 100, 150 that really drive value, make sure that we also adapt the organization so that they went from a very top-down central organization to more decentralized that support the use case, and then started to roll out and invest in those things internally. And I thought it was a very interesting approach.
Yeah, so I think I listened to an HBR Harvard Business Review podcast 2 years ago, and it was about in essence power users.
Mm-hmm.
In essence, deploy the thing, let few people use it in beautiful ways, capture that beauty, and then scale it up.
Yeah.
And we had actually discussion with J&J, one of the J&J person around this topic, and they were describing how they did it. It's a beautiful way. For me, there are really two things. There is the day-to-day use, and in essence, empowering everybody to be more effective. It's almost like you're giving them cars so they come faster. I don't think we need to over-engineer this piece. By definition, giving them these tools will make their life easier, and I don't think we need to try to quantify the return on investment. It will happen anyway. We can quantify, but I don't think is as critical. Then you have what I would call bigger use cases. The use of synthetic chemistry, synthetic biologic design for research, synthetic arms for clinical trials. These are bigger things that require bigger investments usually, and those need to be done to some level in a ROI mode where you structure it, you have the right team around, you see the value, you extract it, and then you might decide to invest in platform X versus Y or X and Y because both are very critical. So for those, let's say, big, if you want, use cases, I would do it in a use case, and you can do it flowers way, but you still will need some level of structuring for enabling everybody to be a better version of themselves. For me, it's like you're giving laptops to everybody. We don't say, let me give you a laptop for 3 weeks, see if there is return on investment or not. I'll take it back if you're not using it. No, I assume that you need it anyway, or a phone or an iPad, whatever it is. So to me, this is why this is actually what I try to describe in the business review and R&D is there is no question that these things will create value and will upskill everybody because now they have their expertise, their experience, and the experience of humanity. I think it's good to have access to the experience of humanity to boost you. Even if you're Einstein, you'll benefit. I'm assuming. I did not talk to Einstein, but I'm assuming he will benefit from having the experience of humanity next to his genius. If we assume everybody is genius. So anyway, so to me this is, but the J&J mode also a beautiful way, and they did, I think, some level of specific organizations. This is also why we recently, last year, we raised in importance and in visibility the DDAI department in R&D, because we want to boost across the board. And I think having a department and having somebody that sits in the R&D leadership team already sends a signal and already puts the investment behind.
Yeah, you need good gardeners to take care of flowers.
Yes.
But a couple of things that you mentioned that I wanted to follow up on. When you were talking about Einstein, I don't know if you know this guy is a mathematician and professor at UCLA, Terence Tao.
Okay.
So he's widely recognized as one of the greatest mathematicians alive, and he was working. Actually, he's working with Google research team on a number of AI research assistants. And the interesting thing is that I don't know if people still say that, but for a while people were saying, especially with LLM can just tell you things that are already known. And now you have those AI assistants who can make autonomous discovery and discover new things. And going back to this mathematician, he was saying, well, using those tools, those AI tools, helped him discover new mathematics. And coming from someone like that, you're like, he has proper street credibility. He's he won the field medal and everything. So if he said that it works, I'm like, who am I to tell him that it doesn't? So, but then another thing I wanted to go back to. So you mentioned those big investments, so big use cases. Yes. So one thing, when we started to discuss, I was telling you, so now I like it because I'm talking to a few people from large pharma, but most of the time I'm talking to small startups. Yeah. And the challenge, as much as I'm spending a lot of time trying to keep up with the field, it's exploding. It's like we see a Cambrian explosion of AI in biotech, AI in general. And I like this Cambrian analogy because during the Cambrian explosion, you've seen animals that, looking back nowadays, you look at them and you're like, they make no sense. I mean, they have too many eyes, too many legs, and of course they don't exist anymore. But then among those crazy things, our ancestors were there, and then and thanks to them, we are here. So I think now among the hundreds and hundreds of companies are the champions of tomorrow. However, when you look at how those companies present themselves, very often they say, we are developing cutting-edge AI algorithm, and we will use them to revolutionize how we do drug R&D. Every time I'm talking to them, I'm like, you're saying that just like 100 other companies. And when you go to a conference, everyone has the same marketing. So now, going back to your perspective, how do you find the right partner? Because there is so much noise. So I'd love to get your perspective. I'm sure you have, like scouting teams and everything, but there is so much noise. How do you find the right fit, both from a technological perspective and a strategic perspective?
No, so it's happening to the AI right now. In biotech and pharmaceutical sciences, it happened previously to specific platforms, like the ADC, for instance, antibody drug conjugates. We had a bubble some time ago around ADC, cell therapy to some extent. We had a bubble where lots of companies became cell therapy companies, more around the platform than around technology. For AI, is bigger, I think, because the level of investment to go in is lower, seems to be. Because to make a cell therapy company, there is some significant investment to have. So yes, we do have a fantastic scouting team in R&D. We also have our business development colleagues that are always doing lots of scouting. In my view, there is like three ways almost you think of it. One is there are companies that have built pipelines based on these technologies to show you directly what they can do. Yeah. I think the best one I can think of is in Silico Meds.
Yeah, I like them too.
And we just signed a deal with them to accelerate some of our projects. I think we signed it in January. And in essence, the proof is in the pudding. They have the pudding, they can show you all their platform, and they went very fast in developing them. Always the question is their speed driven by the technology, or is it driven by extremely efficient drug development discovery cycle that they have created, or
one leads to the other?
Or I think they have the lab in the loop with robots, or all of them together. It's hard to tell unless you are inside be able to tell. The way we do it from a pharma standpoint, our goal is to bring therapies to patients.
Yeah.
If we do it with in silico medicine or another company, it almost doesn't matter for us as long as we're getting what we believe is transformative clinical benefit therapy at the end to come to patients. So this is what I would call the easier way. Then you have, which is most of companies, in essence, you're placing a bet as they're describing the inner working of what they are selling. The sentence of we are using AI to transform everything, like you said, everybody is saying it. And people that are using Excel say it. Like it doesn't correlate with anything. So it has zero value, but like you said, it has a marketing, and everybody frames it slightly differently. There is like a 5% space where people try to diversify. However, when you go, so another company we work with right now for a few years is ITR. In essence, created they do the digital twin model. They created a causal AI, a way to model biology in a causal, trying to link specific targets, specific molecules, etc., to survival, but in a causal way instead of a correlative way. Very interesting. And we looked into them, and they not looked into them, but they shared with us lots of white paper. We dug into a little bit how it works, and we have a partnership with them that is co-construction. We're working closely. We do the lab work, we do stuff, and then we feed into the model, etc. So for me, you have the one where they've proven that they can do it, and you work with them. You have the one that they have not necessarily proven, but they have enough substance behind what they are claiming that then you go, and then in essence you're placing bets. Because if there are 200 of them, you're going to place 3 or 4 bets or 10 bets or whatever it is, depending on the size of each bet. So right now we had Ictos, which we also signed a collaboration with, but this is very, very partnership. They do in silico design, we do some of the testing, it works very nicely. ITI is more on the target discovery side. We worked with Okin in a project for biomarker, and we worked with in silico medicine on accelerating. Those are the best we're placing. At the same time, we're adopting lots of AI tools internally, so it's boosting our internal machine. And in my view, over time, it's going to be a selection process, and whenever we'll see the one that will be the most value creating, the most transformative, the one that works the most, etc., we'll probably then double down or triple down on, or quadruple, whatever it is, depending on what Claude Bertrand agrees on, put more investments on specific areas to boost them, because we see now we have the proof that this works, whether it works because of independence or whether it works because it works as a collaborative work, different models you can have. But it's true that the surface level evaluation is not easy. You have to go deep. That's why scouting team is actually very, very critical with people that are experts. So experts of not just of AI as an approach, but of AI applied to chemistry, AI applied to biologics. So they are experts within that, both the métier and AI.
Do you feel, you mentioned biotech, and when I think biotech, I think Amgen, Genentech, and like how Roche purchased Genentech. Do you feel at some point some of the large pharma will try to get some of those companies, the next step, not just a partnership, but to integrate them, buy them, and then have them as their center of excellence for AI, or however we call it?
So I thought there was, I don't know whether Takeda did this kind of deal. I might be mistaken. At this point, we have not seen this wave happen yet. For ADCs, actually, that happened. Yeah. At one point, big companies started just internalizing these. I think because we're dealing with this uncertainty around value creation from all of these companies, that I think we're a year maybe away from seeing these kind of deals. In my view, this is the natural thing that will happen. The only question is, you have big tech that's coming in.
Yeah.
So then if you say, I'm going to use the model that is in silico medicine or at Okin or something, do we assume that at one point or another the Google model would just be superior anyway. And in essence, in that way, I'm going to partner with these companies right now, knowing that afterwards, we don't know, maybe it's the general big tech companies will have so powerful models that you actually just can use them directly. These are more access to tools rather than partnerships and different scale in terms of investment. So to me, this is also what's creating a little bit more of the hesitation. You have, of course, a company like Isomorphic, which is fantastic, doing amazing work, highly leveraging those tools. So this is kind of, for me, it's slightly different than the old bubbles around ADCs and T-cell engager, et cetera, where you bring it in because at one point, as soon as you see that it's valid, you internalize it as a way to maximize the value. Now, with big tech playing a role, unusual role, it's not the first time that this role is happening, it's somehow impacting the natural progression of this evolutionary selection process, in essence, because you in essence have another species that look weird but could own everything at the end or something. So it's a very I don't know how it's gonna evolve, but yeah, what Google, what Microsoft are doing, coming into this health, into R&D, very robust way, creating very interesting tools, very powerful things, cannot just ignore that.
Yeah, the role of big tech for me is fascinating because on multiple levels. So first of all, I like to see investment coming, like to support things that ultimately impact patient.
Yeah.
I think it's better than having, another TikTok or another social network. The other thing, kind of a direct consequence of that, is that you have highly skilled and well-paid engineers who are focusing on solving biological problems, which is fantastic because in the past they were not doing that. But then that kind of, especially what you were saying, made me think about something. Do you ever see big tech actually trying to double down on becoming pharma company? Because if you look at Isomorphics, it's kind of the closest thing from a big tech developing their own pharma company. I mean, it's in the end, it's an offshoot of Google DeepMind.
So it's hard to tell.
Yeah.
The level of investments, the model itself is so different. Whether big tech would stay as a partner, investing in it, getting strong return on investment, but staying in that space, or whether they will come and say, look, we can do this whole thing better anyway. Difference here is that it's a highly regulated environment. Highly regulated environment. You're dealing with privacy laws that are 10 times more complex. You're dealing with regulatory agencies that big tech has never dealt with, that are a lot more complex. You're dealing with people dying and people living. You're dealing with a healthcare system that lives in its own bubble, and it's very different between country and country. Yeah. So it's not like you can sell an iPhone everywhere. You might not be able to sell, you cannot sell a molecule everywhere. I think it's very different. So is there any one of the big tech that say, by the way, I feel comfortable enough, I'll come into the space? It will be a significant change. I can almost assume that if they do that, they will do it as a separate entity. And in essence, it will be a pharma R&D or a biotech R&D linked to a big tech, rather than big tech, let's say, absorbing it.
Yeah, it's like the isomorphic. It's the isomorphics model.
I think that, but just it's just the regulatory environment itself will be almost a deterrent, I would say. But I agree with you 100%. We have these giant companies with lots of brain power, lots of computational power also behind them, lots of innovation. Now going towards, at the end, helping patients. It's a fantastic thing. I remember in the 2000s where people saying, there's a brain drain, brains are going towards finance, because that's what attracts and gets lots of salary. Do we want to have more finance people? Nothing against finance people, they are beautiful people. But at the end, it's great to have this brain power going towards getting therapies to save people's lives. So for me, it's a fantastic thing that's happening. Don't necessarily think that they will go in, but nobody can tell.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very speculative question. Going back to AI specifically in oncology R&D, so where is it that you see that AI already has an impact today, specifically in your field?
Yes. So I think where AI has already shown some very interesting use cases and is delivering is in the synthetic chemistry, synthetic biologic space. It's obvious, and even isomorphic as an example, and in silico as an example, etc. Ichthyosis. What we don't know right now is there is a lag time between designing an in silico molecule, etc., and getting it to patients and getting it approved. Now, you have lots of headlines of the new AI design, the first AI design company approved or something like that. It's all highly questionable because the time between you do that and the time to get it to an approval still takes time because you have to go to patients. This is very regulated. You can never harm anybody. It's you don't play. This is not, as I said, it's not like selling a new iPhone. But in that space, it's clearly already disrupting, accelerating, and I hope the quality of those molecules at the end, preclinically, is actually looking very interesting. And I hope over time this will translate to clinical, but we'll need to wait a little bit to get that. The second piece is what I would consider boosters across the board. So, for instance, in terms of clinical site selection, to understand where the patients are and what's the profile and how to select, there are lots of what I consider tactical things, helping with clinical protocol writing, helping with regulatory documents review and writing and thinking. All of that is already happening. These are more, I'll say, boosters. They actually have huge return on investment. It's not synthetic molecule is a very simple, beautiful story to tell to somebody who's not in R&D. When you tell them you have something that can help you write a clinical protocol, it doesn't sound as sexy. But at the end, it actually can have huge return on investment because it will lead to potentially a better written trial, better written protocol, with faster turnaround, more interest to patients, more interest to investigators, faster getting data, hopefully data that then show that the molecule works, and getting it faster to patients, which could mean a few years actually, not just a week here or a week here. So in my view, that space in the clinical development, there is significant opportunity to boost it more. For instance, matching the right patient to the right drug. I always say this is the concept of precision oncology, nothing new. If you have 100 patients and you're treating with something that can help 20, it's a good drug. It can help 20% of the people getting it. If you can know which 20 will respond, it's an amazing drug because it's helping everybody that's getting it. And that space of matching patient to drug, which goes back to the biology of the molecule and the biology of disease, is a place where these tools, the genomics revolution already helped a lot, but these tools are now going towards supporting, and I think this could be transformative. And then trial design, regulatory, etc., can also be transformative. The return on investment is harder to, I say, it's not as sexy, let's say, as a design of a new molecule.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, often the thing where we see return today doesn't feel super sexy, but actually you see return and you can put dollar against that. I was reading an article about Eli Lilly, and I also met with some people from NVIDIA who contributed to the project where it was in pharma manufacturing. And in this case, if I remember correctly, they did a digital twin of the factory, and there was a specific process that was a bottleneck. It was about powder drying for, I think, one of the GLP-1 inhibitor. And this drove, I think, 50% of the revenues of Eli Lilly. So the impact was massive because there was such a shortage of those drugs. So they could put this process in place and they could literally put billions of dollars of revenues directly attributed to being able to produce more of the drug and shipping more of the drug.
We, when we were at JP Morgan conference earlier in January, we met few AI startups. And one of them actually was showing how building agentic AIs to take decisions on the manufacturing floor as a way to optimize supply chain, where it's going where, from where, etc., in a totally autonomous way. And this company has shown kind of few examples of how much it can accelerate, how much it can remove, let's say, shortages and things like that, which are very critical in our industry since patients need these therapies to survive, to live sometimes. At the same time, so I think this also is what I would call non-sexy looking things, but at the end is amazing, and the return is there. So even at Servier, and this is one of the missions of the DDAI team, since we have CMC, which is our internal R&D manufacturing group that does manufacturing for early experimental molecules and then transitions to industry. There's a huge number of use cases, all of them in CMC, because lots of them are engineering problems. Sometimes they are chemistry problems, like how many steps do you do to go to synthesize a molecule, 25 steps or 12 or 5. And this is where AI has already been used to optimize. But also there are engineering questions like, supply thing comes in point A, moves to point B, moves to point C, you get it at the end. Sometimes it's between countries, sometimes it's between plants, sometimes between supply chains within the plant. I think, as I said, the return will be very, very big in the space. As I said, it doesn't make a headline.
But it's interesting, this this idea of something being sexy or not, because I was at a conference in Barcelona last week, and we were talking about data, and data. I like data. I find it incredibly exciting, but many people don't. And and the concept of fair data.
Yeah.
You're familiar with that.
Yeah.
And almost everyone I told to, and I also have my own experience with that, is sometimes getting senior leader, understanding that if you want to do all the sexy stuff, you need to do all the unsexy stuff before. So there was one leader from AstraZeneca who was saying that they stopped calling fair data. They stopped talking about that. Now we call it AI-ready data. And all of a sudden they get investment because now people are like, oh yeah, I want those AI-ready data to do the sexy AI things.
No, it's true. And I think in the hierarchy of sexiness, IT infrastructure seems to be the least sexy thing, then data, then AI and use cases, and maybe then like analysis and then AI. And you can even say AI-ready IT infrastructure, and that then enables you to get investment to invest in the right way. It's true. But this is why, because decision making is still related to human psychology, because these are people making all of these decisions. So by definition, there is these biases in a sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think data is and has been for the last 3 years in R&D the central and the biggest investment is how to make data accessible, structured, organized, etc. Is to be in a AI ready data mode, and we're really moving with it. But this was like a few years ago where significant investment was put together, and every year it even increased because we wanted to accelerate.
Yeah. Okay, so we are coming toward the last part of the discussion. So now I'll ask you to take your crystal ball and look into the future. So what are the trends you foresee in our industry over the next 5-10 years, especially at the intersection of AI, data, and the impact on what you do?
So first, I think the anchoring in patients will remain.
Yeah.
I think the mission is there, and I think I mentioned this before joining you in Servier. I do think that we are in the generation, we are super lucky to be in the generation that will solve cancer. Whether it is in 2030, 35, 40, it's almost, I would say, detail, but it's happening. And solve cancer, because I had a friend of mine who always said, I don't love this, can you define it? Solve means remove 90% of cancer-related death. If you want to be quantitative. So what I see is this AI revolution. So I was making that claim before AI, based on the genomic revolution and the platform technology revolution that was happening. Diversification of platforms, even the better small molecule making the better antibodies, ADCs, etc. And genomics giving us better insight on the disease itself for oncology. I think this AI is going to be a booster, an accelerator of all of this. And I'm hoping, going back to your intro, it will lead to more drugs approved every year. And I hope better drugs approved every year, pushing more and more and more, whether it is pushing in numbers of years or pushing in cure rate, let's say. This, I have zero doubt it will happen. Then, what's, I'd say, the crystal ball piece of it is how would different companies and different organizations, whether it's startups, biotechs, pharma, or whether it's VCs, or whether it is big tech playing a role, as we discussed, that's significantly harder to predict. I still assume, and maybe I'm old school on this, I think we're going to keep the ecosystem mode. I don't think there will be a hegemony, or there will be like an Amazon-like company that will take over everything. I think the ecosystem itself is part of what made it successful over the last 20 years and is going to be part of what's going to be make it even more successful in the next 10 years, 15 years, etc., where I hope then we would have solved, let's say, the problem. Question for me is more, we're going to start having hybrid things. Tech, bio, only tech, maybe mid-sized pharma that are only tech companies. We're going to start seeing some hybridization of these things. The regulatory side is going to stay, and I think there's also, I think the FDA, the EMA are actually themselves adopting AI tools and AI approaches and making guidelines on how to use AI tools to build those. So they're also adopting this, which will be an accelerator also from their side. The other piece that's to play a role in this whole thing is the geopolitical context. An interesting context, let's say. I don't know, the word interesting is probably not appropriate. It's hard to, I'm not going to go into politics. But there is, I think, so I was in China last week. Mm-hmm. And there is this amazing evolution and innovation coming from China that is going to accelerate everything. Companies in China, in essence, some of them that I met, 2020 decided to start a company, 2026 having a full pipeline, 15, 20 programs, 5 of them already in late clinical, or 2 or 3 in late clinical looking good. It's amazing. It is, of course, these are biotechs, so they have the speed of biotech, but I would say even faster than what I would consider an old school Boston-based biotech would have done, let's say 10 years ago. It's an amazing additional accelerator. They're using AI. AI is part of what they're doing. Everybody will have AI as part of what they're doing anyway. So to me, at least, it's this intersection of all of these that I hope will lead to what I see as my ambition, my career goal, let's say, which is to contribute to solving cancer. And all of this will, at the end, lead to this. What's impossible to predict is timing. As I said, that's why I don't think it will happen in 2030, but I am optimistic that will happen between 30 and 40, I'll say. So yeah, so this is at least my, it's not, there's no specificity in my crystal ball. It's very hazy, let's say, but that's how I see it evolve. And as you, going back to what you mentioned earlier, lots of energy and lots of investment and lots of brain power, artificial and human, going towards solving a very important problem. It's a beautiful thing. You cannot ignore that this is a beautiful thing. For me, if does it come from China or from US or from, it's almost a detail, my view.
Well, Walid, I think it's a perfect way of concluding our conversation. Thank you so much. That was brilliant, very, very interesting, and yeah, let's see what happened in the next 5 to 10 years.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for coming to visit us at Servier. Just one thing that I forgot to mention is that you hear that I'm very passionate about patients. This also is enabled because Servier is governed by a foundation, in essence enabling us to go where others might not be able to go. We're not sensitive as much to, let's say, market changes and increase or decrease. And this, I'll say, enables us to be very mission focused. I'm not saying I think the entire industry has that mission focus. I actually strongly believe it. But at Servier, we have this kind of additional booster, let's say, because we don't have to worry as much about, let's say, the market is low and down. We had like what people call the biotech winter, with investments going down a few years ago, etc. We are not as sensitive, let's say, to winters. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.